Good afternoon to you. It is 3:34. Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at 5th and State. And it's time for another Gannon University Inspire interview. And we want to welcome back Dr. Sherry Mason. We call her Sam. Good to see you. She is the director of Project NePTWNE. And we're talking about the Center for Lake Erie Education and Research, CLEER, at the Blasco Library. Yeah. You are like just over the moon how excited you are, isn't it?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's for me, it's like a I don't know. I feel like it's like a 15-year dream, from the moment I really went out on Lake Erie aboard, I don't know, this small little vessel. You may have heard of it, the U.S. Brig Niagara.
So I didn't realize you came up like that as like crew or?
No, so I was a professor of chemistry.
Oh, okay.
I studied atmospheric chemistry. The flagship Niagara League was looking to start an environmental science cruise aboard the vessel. Reached out to regional universities. I was one of them because I led the environmental science program, and they said, "Are you interested in being part of this?" And I said, "Can I go too? If I can go, then yeah, I'll bring students." But nice. Me being able to join was critical.
Wow.
And prior to that, I'd lived on the shores of Lake Erie for 10 years. But I wasn't all that impressed with them. Don't hit me.
Yeah.
There was a lot of algal, dead algae washing up at the shorelines. We had a fish botulism problem, lots of dead fish.
A lot of kids remember jumping into the lake when it was all foamy and stuff. Like kind of gross.
It had this legacy to it, right? And I remember actually asking my dad, like, I don't really get the love affair people have for the Great Lakes. And then I got to join this environmental science field course aboard the Niagara. And it was my first time sailing. It was my first time on a tall ship, and my first time out on the Great Lakes. And like those three things together, I think especially, I was just overwhelmed. And just like, once you get out in the lake, it's just so beautiful and so big. Like, I think that's something that we really don't appreciate. I think especially if you've lived here your whole life, you just don't kind of, I grew up in Texas. We had like lakes, kind of. They're more reservoirs. They're man-made. They're pretty small. You can always see the other side. You get out there and it's like you can't even see the other side. And and it was just it just changed my whole kind of perspective. And that is exactly I want to bring this to everybody. I want every kid along the shores of Lake Erie to have this experience, and every person, because, I met a grandmother here in Erie, Pennsylvania, has lived here her whole life. She's in her 90s. She had never been to Presque Isle.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And like, she thought that our bay was the lake. And I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. No, it's
Wow.
like a drop in the ocean that is the Great Lakes. And so that's really what this is about, is breaking down those barriers and making the Great Lakes, making Lake Erie and all of the science that's around it more accessible.
I love, and we talked about it last week when we went for the preview, when you had the media out, and it was the concept of you start really small. You start with the even microorganisms, but in a very, very small space. And then you kind of go to Lake Erie, and then you go to the greater Great Lakes region. Then you go to the entire world with the Science on a Spear from NASA. But talk about, some of the things, some of the outcomes that you're hoping that will be a part of this, both for Gannon students in a research capacity in that higher level, higher ed kind of thing, but also for the general public and the school students. There was a bunch of homeschoolers last week, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about all that.
Oh my goodness, where do we start? So I like to talk about it as like an educational K through gray pipeline, right? So this isn't just K through 12. This is everybody, K through gray. And I think it's about building up understandings as we go through our lives, but making science more accessible to people. And so, yeah, we had the homeschool group in, and it was fantastic. They were ages 1 to like 17. It was huge. And then their parents. And so our initial plan was that we were going to break them up into cohorts based upon their ages, but they wanted to stay as families, and that was wonderful. But it did make, like, how do we present this information to, people of very different ages? But so, it was very much, more of a, like, let's talk about what this space is. Let's share a little bit, is definitely very surface level. But even then, we brought all the kids into the education lab at the end, and I was like, okay, I want to know what y'all learned. What excited you? What did you find interesting? And the variety of things that they were talking about, one kid's like, I didn't know we had muscles, and another kid brought up the fact that, Presque Isle Bay is so small in comparison to the whole lake. And another kid was talking about, I didn't realize that Lake Erie was so shallow in comparison to the other lakes. And another kid was talking about the water cycle. Another kid was talking about, we brought in, my student was so excited, woke up at 5 a.m. to go collect water from different water sources. He was out in Lake Erie, he was out at Asbury Woods, he was in different creeks, and because he wanted to show the kids that, like, different water has different microorganisms.
Interesting.
And the kids got it. They were like, I didn't know that, like, there were different microbes, and and so to be able to translate that, and what was so great, right, is like I expected the excitement from the kids. I really did, because it's such a cool space. But they left, and I asked my docents, right? This was the first time that they got to be in that kind of docent position. Like, you are an environmental educator. This is your job. And I was like, so how do y'all think it went? And I was really expecting, like, all sorts of, like, oh, well, hums and haws. And they were just like the kids. They were like, this was awesome.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's it. So you bring in kids K through 12, and we're using college students to educate them. And then those K through 12 become college students that educate the next generation. And then these college students, they're also educating in the summer. I really picture a lot of public outings, and the college students are part of those as well. And breaking, again, it's about breaking down those barriers to science. I really want, Mary Smith and Joe, Barry and Joe Smith to come out and, like, oh, this is how you collect a water sample, and these are the microbes that are in it. What about microplastics? Can you show me microplastics? Why are these an issue? And so it's not about telling people what to think. It's getting people re-engaged with the child in them, where they asked questions. Mm-hmm. And they're always asking questions. And then, oh my goodness, are we in a library? Where do you go to answer questions? A library. And you can find books, and you can find resources, and and so we're breaking all of that down, and we're really making it accessible for people across all ages, across all socioeconomic demographics. It's there. And as we grow it, because, even at the opening, it's not like it's done, right? It is a constant evolution, and we'll be adding more and more components to that as we go.
We're talking to Dr. Sam Mason. She is the director of Project NePTWNE, which is that nano and polymer technology for water and neural network exploration. What's the neural network exploration part of this?
I say that it's nano and polymer technologies for water networks of Erie. I think that's a better way of describing, kind of the cohesiveness of it. Yeah. It is really a water quality and economic revitalization initiative.
There is a lot to the blue economy that Gannon's investing in here.
That's exactly it. Our as Erie, right, as a community, our best asset is Lake Erie, and this is about us capitalizing on that and using that to help propel us as a community to be more, to be able to live, right? And more sustainably, more affluently. We really want to bring everybody along on that. So this is about job creation, but job creation that supports and protects our water resources, as opposed to one that is detrimental to it. I think somebody who's grown up, I've seen that there's this perpetual kind of conversation as though the economy is in opposition to the environment, that the only way we can have a good economy is at the detriment of the environment. Wow. And I think that is, and it's not just me, there's lots of studies out there that have established that, in fact, that's the exact wrong way to frame it. Nobody wants to live in a garbage dump. Nobody wants to vacation in an area that is trashed and polluted, right? Nobody wants to live there. Nobody wants to vacation there. It's not good for our public health. It's not good for anything, right? So it's actually the exact opposite. They're not in opposition. They're hand in hand. As we do things that are good for the environment, the economy comes along, and they work together in tandem. And that's what this is all about.
When you talk about the harmful algal blooms, and again, that we see much more evidence on the western side of the lake, right?
Yeah.
Near Toledo and something like that. But what's one thing that an average person can do to just, I'm not going to be, how we're recycling, right? We're putting our bottles into the recycling bin and so on. Well, we can do something about water quality, can't we, as average people?
Absolutely. Just
what do we got to do?
Fertilize less.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
So lay off the Miracle-Gro a little bit, or
oh, absolutely. And there's so many better ways.
But my grass.
I was just talking with somebody earlier this week. He was talking about compost tea, and I was like, okay, I just want to make sure that I understand what you mean by compost tea. Like, this isn't something you drink, right? And he's like, no, definitely not. But it's basically taking, compost, food waste and other organics, and kind of boiling it in water, and then taking that water, that tea, and using that to fertilize your lawn, using that to fertilize your plants, and in doing it that way, you're doing it in a way that is much more in tune with nature. This is how nature works, right? Miracle-Gro and these fertilizers, it's an extractive industry that goes through the various processing to produce this thing that is really high in nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, but really is very low in other micronutrients that plants need. And because it's so high in the nitrogen and the phosphorus, those things tend to run off into our waterways and lead to harmful algal blooms. So there's so many better ways that we could be going about this. So that's a company there that could start here in Erie. I mean, we really need an industrial composting facility, but I could imagine somebody setting up shop, and I'm going to make and sell compost tea for you to water your house plants with, instead of, going out and buying Miracle-Gro.
That's amazing. You mentioned the economy, and I'm thinking about what a big deal, recreational fishing is, with the walleye, with the steelhead, and so on. And you don't want your beautiful trouts full of little microplastics or anything like that.
No. And that is that direct connection, right? We take care of the economy, we bring in more tourists, more people fishing, and we have better fish, right? I was actually just talking with PA Fish and Boat, and I learned a lot about our fisheries. They're really rebounding in terms of the diversity of fish species that we have, which is so lovely to hear. Mm-hmm. And that's something that in the center we can do better to communicate, because oftentimes, as scientists, we're in the lab, we're doing the work, we're not great communicators.
But now you have this beautiful, almost like a showcase. It's almost like entering a mall, for science. We can't not talk about science as a sphere with the NASA 600 data points. Is that correct?
It's almost 600 different data sets that we can project onto this 6-foot appearing to be floating sphere in the middle of the room. So it's a product of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. Yes, almost 600 different data sets. And so we can do anything from, I like to just have it on the blue marble, which is when you guys walked in. It just shows the planet, and everybody is just in awe, just getting to see that. But it has real-time data sets where you can be looking at, for example, cloud cover over the past 30 days to about 2 hours before you hit the button to look at that data set. It's constantly updating. And so we can watch hurricanes develop and then disperse all across the globe. It also has historical data, so we can look at like earthquakes over time, or human migration, human transportation, friendship. Facebook friendship groups are on there.
Really?
Yeah. So like just showing how interconnected. That's what I love about things like that, is that it reminds you how interconnected we are as a planet. Now more than ever, we are an interconnected society, and that I think helps to kind of break down some of those traditional barriers that lead to war and people caring less about other people than themselves, right? We need to do more to build up those social networks that really help to support and sustain us as a species.
Let's talk about when the public can get to see this, because it's coming up here next week, right?
It is a week from Saturday. October 4th is our official opening. The ribbon cutting, so anytime, I think this is really important to say, anytime the library is open, the Center for Lake Erie Education and Research is open. From the time that, October 4th on, that's the way it is. So October 4th, the library opens at 9. We do our ribbon cutting at 10 a.m. and we are open for business. So we have a whole suite of activities. I've reached out to a bunch of community partners that are all focused on the water and said, I want to make this a fun, family-friendly, water-focused party down at the waterfront. And so that's what we're doing. So we're going to ribbon cut and, guide people through our space. We'll have hourly facilitated programs with the Science on the Sphere. So that's a facilitated program. We're connecting 10 different data sets and telling a story as we go through it. And then in the education lab, we constantly have something going on Saturday. First thing in the morning, our professor, Greg Andrasso, is going to be doing this Japanese method of fish prints.
Oh, cool.
So he's going to collect fish, you're going to paint them, and you're going to make a print of the fish. So you don't take a smelly fish home, you get to take home a print of the fish. And then at 1 o'clock, we're going to transition from him to the neighborhood art house is coming down, and they're going to be doing fish watercolors. We're going to paint with watercolors and fish origami. And then on Sunday in the education lab, City Gallery from just up the street on State Street, Stephen Trotsky and Lena Lovina are going to come down and help us to create a community-made mosaic. Oh. It's going to be so cool. So they're bringing down, glass, beach glass, and they're bringing down a repurposed piece of wood. And we're going to build this mosaic together as a community. And then we're going to hang it permanently in our bookshelf wall, as like a tribute, because this is what this is about. This is about community. So that's going to be going on in the education lab. And then we'll have our emergency exit door open that will take the community out to a great big grassy area where we'll have a tent set up and our other community partners out there. You can learn about invasive species. You can learn about rain gardens, the various kind of activities going on. Sons of Lake Erie is going to be fishing off of the dock where the Brig Niagara is normally housed. In situ that makes water quality testing equipment. It's going to be out at the docks behind the BMC showing off some of their equipment. BMC is going to be open and giving tours. You can check out the Porcupine and see kind of the status of that amazing vessel that we are going to get finished and get into the water. And then really exciting, Feed Media Arts Center, which is again right up the street on State Street. They are bringing down what is called the Lake Erie Listening Project. It is a multimedia sensory experience. I try and talk about it, but it never does justice to what it is. We partnered with them this summer. They brought in an artist in residence. We got her out on a vessel. She recorded the sights and sounds of Lake Erie.
Wow.
And they put together this experience. You sit in a boat and you feel vibrations, not like waves. It's much more subtle. You're not going to get seasick. You sit in this boat and you hear Lake Erie, you see the water, and it takes you out to the lake. So if you've never had an opportunity, if you're afraid to go on a boat, this is your experience. And so they're bringing it down to the Bayfront Maritime Center. So we're basically bringing the lake to you as part of our opening weekend.
This is phenomenal. The Center for Lake Erie Education and Research at Blasco Library. Again, it's part of Gannon University's Project NePTWNE. And you think about, all the alums and all of the folks that are involved to invest in the current students and future students. And this is just one of those great outcomes of all of that. Dr. Sam Mason, thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is 5 minutes in front of 4 o'clock.